All right, great. Well, then introduce yourself to the audience and give a little bit of background into you and how that background led to a career as an Etsy coach and what exactly that is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Um, and hold on one second. Okay, cool. So essentially how I came to be an Etsy coach, I mean, it's a little bit of a long story with running my own small business starting back about 4 or 5 years ago, but I was working in corporate offices. I went to school for business and then I went on and worked in marketing and customer loyalty, procurement, worked in corporate offices for about 8 years. But while I was working at corporate offices, I knew that that's not what I was meant to do for like the rest of my life. I knew there had to be more than just working 9 to 5 all week long and waiting for the weekend. So at that point in my life, I really was just focusing on finding other outlets, like creative outlets and hobbies to just see, what do I like to do? What intrigues me? What interests me? And I started to make my own skincare. And at that point in time, I was just experimenting, having fun, and I started to share about it on Instagram. And people were like, oh, hey, where can I get that? And then I decided to put it up on Etsy, and people started to purchase. And it started to grow a bit. And before I knew it, I was like, I physically cannot handle working a corporate job 50, 60 hours a week and running this little business that seems to have some legs to it, right?
Yeah.
So I decided to take a plunge and I left my corporate job almost 4 years ago now and focused on plant based beauty full time. Grew plant based beauty to multiple six figures over the course of 2 years and really used a lot of my business background and corporate experience to grow my small business. And while I was doing that, obviously, like my network of small businesses that I interacted with and talked to and just met from running my own small business started to grow. And I heard from so many creatives and small business owners and artists that they really struggled with the business side of things. And for me, that came really easy. I'm like, I love the business side of things, while other people love the creative side, and the business side can be really challenging. So, when I started to realize I had a knack for the business side of things, and a lot of my corporate experience actually helped me to become very successful on Etsy as one of those avenues, I started to do coaching. I'm like, I can help these people. I can help small business owners who also want to leave their full time job, who also want to have thousands and thousands of orders on Etsy, who also want to have a growing Instagram following for their products, their business, and what they sell. So that has kind of transformed to where I am today. So I mostly focus on being an Etsy coach and helping people grow and scale their Etsy shop. But it's a little bit different because I focus on not like the hobbyist or the crafter or like the super, super beginner, because a lot of small business owners who are a little bit more advanced, they don't really look at Etsy. They don't think about Etsy, but
Mhm.
it's such a great place to have your products. So I work with small business owners to get them back on Etsy to create another revenue stream and just to help them reach their goals that they have with their own business.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think we have somewhat similar trajectories in that I also, I've had other jobs and then I started the gallery side, which was my primary focus. But so many artists were asking me, like, how do I do this with my business? How do I do this with my business? And I had studied business in school. So I was like, oh, I didn't realize this didn't come easy for other people. And so
Right.
that's kind of how I got into like business coaching for artists and the podcast and all of that. So it's kind of funny. We like followed similar paths, but I think you're right. I think a lot of people overlook Etsy or think it's for beginners, think it's for crafters. Like I work with so many artists at all different levels, and I think there's so many different avenues that you can use Etsy to elevate your business, to be another income stream, really at any level. It's not limiting. And so I'd love to kind of pick your brain about that. But like, let's start with like, why Etsy? Why do you love Etsy over other platforms? Like, why do you specifically coach Etsy?
Yes, such a good question. So I love Etsy because, from my experience and from working with my clients, it is just a platform that once you learn how to optimize it, once you learn how to master it, it does the marketing for you. So when we think about like Instagram and having our own website, I 100% believe that every small business should have that, right? Every artist should have that. If you're serious about creating and selling what you create and impacting other people's lives with what you make, we have to have an Instagram, we have to have a website. We have to be on all of the different channels because it's truly a game of how do we get in front of more people, right? How do we just have maximum impact and get this product, this artwork in front of more people? So while most people focus on Instagram and website, they leave Etsy on the table and they don't even consider it, or they've tried it and they didn't learn how to optimize it, so they gave up, or they've just heard horror stories from other small businesses, so they don't even consider it and they're literally leaving money on the table. So when I look at my business for plant-based beauty, my organic skincare business, I started on Etsy, but then I really focused on Instagram. I focused on my website. I focused on Pinterest. I focused on email marketing. I focused on selling on Faire. I focused on all of those avenues, but I never turned Etsy off. A lot of people, once they get their own website, they're like, oh, I don't need Etsy anymore. But for me, it was running in the background, consistently bringing customers to me, that I'm like, why would I ever turn this off? It's an entire different audience of people that aren't following me on Instagram, don't have access to my direct website, don't know about me. So let me keep this going for the lifetime of my business to get in front of those people. So to answer why Etsy, why do I love Etsy? Once you learn how to optimize it, it does the marketing for you. It's going to continue to bring new customers to you that aren't on your Instagram, aren't on your website, continue to give you more exposure. And Etsy customers are loyal customers. So if they love your product, they're going to come back, buy for themselves, buy for friends and family. And it turns into this beautiful passive income revenue stream because you don't have to do the marketing. You don't have to get people there. Etsy does that for you. So as long as you know how to optimize it, it's just a beautiful revenue stream to have in your business. And that's why I love talking all things Etsy.
No, I completely agree. So let's say you just sold somebody, a listener's like, all right, I'm in, and maybe they have sold work through Instagram, or they, they're in galleries, or even they have their own website. They are selling artwork. What are like a couple of tips, like easy to get people started on Etsy if they just have never used the platform, or if they maybe kind of like have used it, but kind of felt like in the past they didn't really use it to its best extent?
Yes, such a great question. So, the main thing that people struggle with on Etsy is how do you get your products found? So, Etsy is a very popular platform. There are a lot of small businesses, a lot of artists, a lot of creatives on there. And that's just because they bring in 80 million shoppers per year. So, everyone wants to be on there, right? So, what happens here is how do you get your products seen? How do you actually get found? When someone types in modern artwork, how do you show up on that first page so people can actually click and then learn more and then add to cart? So the first problem, or the first place for opportunity, is getting your products actually found. And what this really comes down to is SEO, titles, tags, keywords. And this is, I think, the basics that people know about Etsy. Like, they know that the title of your product is important, the keywords, the SEO is important, but they don't execute it in the right way. So when we talk about the title of your product, this is literally when someone is searching something, if your title matches that search, you're going to show up because it's a direct match. But what people do is either one of two mistakes. Number one, they're way too general with their title. So if someone sells candles, for example, instead of talking about the specifics of their candle, they talk about, oh, just a candle that's lavender. And now you're competing against 50,000 other products that are lavender candles.
Right.
But if you get super specific, you're going to be a perfect match for the person who types in, I want a coconut apricot wax candle that has a wooden wick, that has dried lavender floral buds on top, that is scented with lavender and coconut, or lavender and tropical scents, that's in a blue vase or a blue cement vessel or a blue jar or whatever it may be. So when we get super specific with our title that we use, we're going to become a match for that person who's looking for something super specific. And I think where people mess up here is they don't realize that if someone's shopping on Etsy, they're looking for that specific item. If they wanted any old candle or any old piece of art, they would go on Amazon, they would go to Target. But if they're on Etsy, they're looking for something unique for a specific room in their house, for a specific purpose, for a specific gift, for someone that loves something in particular. So the biggest mistake that I see when people are giving a title to their product is being super general, trying to be for everyone, when Etsy is for shoppers who are looking for something specific. So really leaning into those descriptive words to title your product. Instead of saying, for my example, my product was called Heal and Glow Facial Serum, but no one is actually searching that. They're
Hmm.
searching organic moisturizer for dry skin, anti aging, acne benefits, healing the skin, things like that. And those are the words that you should use in your title. So, a couple tricks that I love to tell people is imagine you're on the phone with a friend. How would you describe your artwork to them? What type of modality did you use to create it? What colors? Where is it good for? Is it like a massive piece that goes in a living room, a statement piece? Is it something that's good in a bedroom? Is it something that's for the bathroom? So, really having those descriptive words as if you're describing it to a friend on the phone who can't see what your item is. How would you describe it? So, that's the biggest initial piece of feedback that I would give for people starting on Etsy. This is probably the hardest part because it takes some trial and error, takes some learning, takes some testing. But as you continue to evolve here and find what works, this is going to give you that leg up to actually be seen on that search results page. Now, what comes next is making sure when they click on your listing, you have all the details, all the photos that people need to feel confident to add to purchase. So that's kind of like the next steps. But the main step is you have to get your products found. You have to know what people are searching. You have to be super specific, super descriptive, and that is how you start to get traction and actually get your product seen on Etsy.
Yeah, I love that piece of advice. And I guess my question would be, let's say you were testing the waters and you did a title. If you maybe give it some time, like a month or two, I don't know how long it would take to kind of get traction, but should you switch the title if you're not seeing results? Like, how do you recommend, like, time wise, kind of trial and erroring
Yes.
it?
Great question. I would recommend to give it like 2 to 4 weeks. So
Okay.
choose your titles, and then on Etsy, you can also add them as tags. So that's basically saying, hey, Etsy, I want to be associated with these words. So choose what you have, let it run for 2 to 4 weeks, and then Etsy does have statistics on your visits and your views. So see how it looks, right? And if you're not getting the traction that you want, cool. Now, after 2 to 4 weeks, we go back and we tweak. A couple things that we can do when we're tweaking is search for products like yours and see what other people on that first page are using in their title because success leaves clues, right? So if someone
Mhm.
else is having amazing progress on the first page, let's see what words they're using and start to extrapolate some of those words and add them to your title as well. Now, another thing that someone can do if it's been 2 to 4 weeks and they're not seeing results, I actually recommend this right from the start, but when you have your title, every single one of those words, go into Etsy and do a search for them because then you're going to see what other items are showing up. Does your product, does your artwork align with that? Is it the right vibe? Is that where you want to be? And if not, let's not use those words because they're not making any benefit, right? I
Right.
actually have an example from a client who sold beautiful, I believe it was watercolor tree paintings of like fruit trees, like oranges and lemons and things like that. Beautiful watercolor. And what she did is in her Etsy title, she put modern art. And when you go to Etsy and you type in modern art, it's the very like geometric and the rainbows and the squares and there's
Mhm.
nothing green or lemon or orange tree on that page. So what she was doing is trying to use words that literally didn't match with her vibe. So if she showed up on that first page, well cool, but everyone else on that page is selling a different vibe, so you don't even want to be there because
Right.
chances are someone's not going to click on your listing. So that's another little hack. If you're not seeing results, or even right from the start, too, let's look up those words that you're using. Make sure your artwork actually fits. Do you want to be associated with that? Do you coincide with that? Because if yes, that's where you want your products to be and where you want to be found right there.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, kind of expanding beyond just Etsy, let's say, like, can we use other things like Pinterest, for example, to grow our Etsy presence and like maybe get more views and stuff like that? Like, do you coach people through that as well?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, specifically with my experience on Pinterest, at least, what I have found, because I did use Pinterest with plant based beauty,
Mhm.
what I have found works for Pinterest is blog posts that then lead to a product at the bottom of that blog post. I feel like people go on Pinterest. Well, I guess they can for decor. That may be a really good one for like artists that are selling artwork. I feel like people go on Pinterest for one of two reasons. Number one, to find a solution to a problem. Like,
Mhm.
I want to find a blog post about XYZ that I can't find on Google that's like a unique, different approach. And for me, with my skincare, I had a ton of blog posts about cystic acne, hormonal acne, and how my products really helped with that. So when I put those blog posts up on Pinterest, they did great. People read them and then they learned about the product at the bottom and then they bought it. So I personally didn't use Pinterest and Etsy together. That was more Pinterest to my website, a blog post, and then a purchase. But as I was speaking, light bulb moment of decor. Like people go to Pinterest 100% for decor inspiration, living room decor, how they want to restyle their bedroom, their bathroom. So for artists, if it's literally original artwork or prints or things like that, and you have beautiful photos of look at how this can look in your home, or look how this can be styled. Look at this minimalist piece of artwork in a beautiful minimalist kitchen. Look at this modern artwork in a beautiful modern living room. Look at this rustic Southern artwork in a rustic Southern home, right? And that stuff on Pinterest, and then you link it to Etsy. That's going to be great because people go to Pinterest for those reasons. So that can totally work. I always love to just tell people, like, what is the intention? Okay, cool. Well, Pinterest, people search for decor. I sell items that are decor related. Cool. Let's send them to my shop.
Mhm.
Could totally work, and love that idea right there. So thanks for a great question that led to a unique answer that I haven't really shared before, but I love it.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Now that I'm thinking about it too, it's like, what have I used Pinterest for? And a lot of the times it is like redoing a kitchen. Like, how can I, you look for inspiration. And I think a lot of the times if you find something you like and then you can just click to purchase, even better. So, I mean, I think from a decor perspective, that could be a really good route to get people to the shop.
Yes.
What would you say are some mistakes that you're seeing people make when it comes to Etsy that maybe are resulting obviously in no sales or just their shop not getting noticed?
Yeah, really great question. So, what most people struggle with is I'll give two examples. So, number one is putting their items up on Etsy and just expecting sales to come. So, this is something that I see a lot of people do is they're like, okay, cool. I'm bought in on Etsy. This is great. Let me go and like put my products up there and I'm going to expect sales to just come in every single day.
Yeah.
So, like any platform, it's not that simple, right? That's like posting on Instagram once and expecting sales to come in every single day. Any type of platform, if it's Instagram, if it's your website, if it's Etsy, if it's selling on a fair, they require you to actually know how to work with the algorithm to get your product seen. So I think the first mistake is expectations, right? To get results on Etsy, to see massive success on Etsy, it requires you to stand out from the rest. It's not doing something 50% and then expecting massive results. It's doing something 100% to get those amazing results. So there is work required on Etsy, but the beautiful part is as you elevate your brand, your business on Etsy, you're elevating your brand and business on your own website with the same exact tactics, on Instagram with the same exact tactics. So that's why I love teaching Etsy because it's not just Etsy, Etsy, Etsy. It's elevating your business to stand out against everyone else by becoming the best in terms of your keywords, in terms of your photos, in terms of your description, how you talk about your products, in terms of your reviews. The more you elevate that on Etsy, it's not just Etsy, it carries over to use all of that amazing work that and foundation that you're laying and put it on your website. Put it up on your Instagram too, as you're getting amazing reviews or as you're learning how to talk about your products in the description, as you're getting professional photos to really highlight your products. Great. Use that on your other platforms too. So, biggest mistake is number one, expectations, expecting massive results without actually putting in the work. Second mistake, which I kind of alluded to, is photos. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see. If you are running a business and you want to have amazing results, you have to act like that business owner who gets amazing results. It's not going to be the DIY photos. It's not going to be the DIY branding. It's not going to be the DIY labels in my example with skincare. It's going to be the professional photos that show you take your business seriously, that make you stand out against everyone else selling skincare on Etsy. So, for example, in the skincare example that we're talking about here, there are people on Etsy who are selling skincare for like $10 with a label that's handwritten. And then there were my products, which were branding was spot on, labels were spot on, professional photos. And it was $30 per bottle instead of $10 per bottle. When someone is on Etsy, they see that difference and they're going to trust the brand, the business, the artist that is actually taking their business seriously and putting their best foot forward. So a lot of people don't want to spend the money on professional photos, don't want to invest in their business. But the name of the game is, as a small business owner, as an artist, we aren't doing anything that's proprietary, right? I think if with an
Mhm.
artist, you have your beautiful, unique style, but you still have to showcase that. You still have to pitch yourself. You still have to sell yourself. You still have to be in the places where people are shopping. And the more you focus on that, the more you focus on learning marketing and learning platform optimization, that's going to carry you. That's going to give you that passive income revenue stream on Etsy. That's going to get you in front of the right customers. So knowing like what is required of you, right? What are you doing to stand out from the rest? What are you doing above and beyond? How are you differentiating? How are you becoming the best option for the person that's searching for what you sell? And that will carry you on any platform. And I think that mentality is what helped me to grow my business to multiple six figures, because as I elevated across every single platform, people notice that. People will go to my website, cool, like this is a serious, credible business and I'm learning and these products sound awesome. I'm going to buy them. People will go on my Instagram and see the same thing. They would go on Etsy and see the same thing. They would go on Fair Marketplace and see the same thing. So it's truly just that evolution of how do you stand out by becoming the best, because it's saturated out there. No matter what we sell, what we make, if there's no patent on it, I mean, it's pretty saturated and there's people doing similar things. So it comes down to differentiating yourself and taking it seriously, because if you do it right, it can be an amazing revenue stream. I have over 5,000 orders on Etsy. So that's 5,000 additional people that I maybe would have never gotten in front of. But you can make it something that's awesome and brings customers to you as long as you put in that legwork and get it to that spot.
Well, definitely. And I think it, touching on what you said, it comes down to credibility. I mean, I think, yes, it's a saturated market. Yes. But also when you're selling online, I mean, people can't see you in person, touch it, feel it, like they don't know what they're going to get. And I think when you have really great photos, you go through everything as a professional, people are going to assume you're a professional. I mean, there's definitely been times when I've been on, Etsy or Amazon, or, you buy from these really small people and I'm like, is this even going to come in the mail? Like, is this
Right.
going to come and
Yep.
not be great? And I think when you see something that's, a blurry photo and it's only $5, you're like, what am I going to get? And I personally, from the skincare route, if I'm buying something that I want to clear up my skin, I'm probably going to pay a little more of a premium for something that looks like it's going to do the job and looks like it was well made, not, thrown together and then written on with a Sharpie, because
Right.
is that going to make my skin worse? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's I love that you say that, because so many people think on Etsy they have to be the cheapest. They're like, the only way I can be successful is if I'm the cheapest one because everyone's trying to undercut me. I agree with you 100%. If people are on Etsy, like there's one of two things happening. Number one, there are small businesses out there who are just trying to make a quick buck that are probably not giving a great experience, right? The photo looks like one thing, you get something else. Does it even arrive? Like you said, does it take 5 weeks to get to you? So when shoppers are on Etsy, they're looking for the small business owner they can trust. So you can create trust by your photos, your description, your reviews. And also, another way that you can create trust is essentially like having your entire brand store outlined on Etsy, showing that you're taking it seriously, and by having premium pricing.
Right.
So, perfect example of what you said, if there's a $5 something or 30, 40, 50, you trust the one that's more expensive. And so many people think they have to be the cheapest on Etsy. But from my perspective, since there are some small business owners that are trying to make a quick buck, when people are shopping on Etsy, they'd rather pay a premium to know confidently that they're going to get what they're expecting. They're going to pay that because they're like, I don't want the $5 thing that who knows if it's going to arrive. I'll pay 30, 40, 50 because this looks credible. This looks like legit. This is a true business. So that's one thing I love to tell people, because a lot of people fixate on price, that other people are undercutting them. Well, cool. That's actually a disadvantage to those people because it shows
Right.
low quality. That's what people associate. And one example I have too is one of my members who sells absolutely beautiful gemstone necklaces, authentic gemstones that are between $300 to $450 per piece. A lot of people would be like, you can't sell that on Etsy. Everyone's going on Etsy for cheap stuff. We've been working together for a few months and she has already over 20 sales. So you can see
Wow.
how, if you do the math, like that's awesome, right? Cool. And there is an appetite for high quality, premium, priced properly items on Etsy. And that's where you want to get in front of those shoppers and not like the bargain hunters that are on there, right?
Well, exactly. And I think people shopping for art, a lot of the time, and you're always going to have the like Target art, the home goods art, but if people are looking for an original piece, they're usually willing to pay a little bit more. And I remember in college, my marketing professor said price is not a differentiator. Like she was like, you cannot be the best if you're the lowest price. She's like, there'll always be Walmart. There'll always be someone that
Yeah.
can undercut you for whatever reason. So she was like, low price isn't what's going to make you better. And that's always stuck with my head. And I don't think that means you need to be the highest price either, but it's, you can't just be the lowest to do well. And I think this is the perfect example that, yeah, sometimes being the lowest actually hurts you. I mean, people are like,
Yeah.
why, especially with art, I'd be like, why is it priced so low? Like, what
Yeah.
materials is she using that allowed her to sell this for $5? So, yeah, it's about finding that price point that makes sense for you and building credibility, because then people are like, yes, clearly this is worth that cost.
Yes. I love it. 100%.
Yeah. So something else I was thinking about while we were talking is there any benefit to, I mean, I guess there's some benefit to obviously having more products, you have more to sell, but like to continually adding products to your site. So say I was an artist and I kind of wanted a passive income stream and I made, let's say 5 prints. Can I put those 5 prints up, get them going and then kind of walk away? Or is it more beneficial to kind of continually add to my shop? How does Etsy prioritize that if they do?
Yeah. So anecdotally, people say that the more items you have, the better. I've heard this from lots of people, but with my own Etsy shop, I only had like 10 products the whole entire time. And the thing with Etsy is it's fairly simple, but if you are coming out with new collections every month, every quarter, and you got 10, 15, 20 new prints or new pieces, that can be a bit of work to like add it on Etsy every single month or every single quarter. So what I recommend people to do is your year round items, your core items, if it's prints, if it's bestsellers, if it's things that you know you can't keep off the shelf, right? Those are the things you want to put on Etsy because they're going to be there year round and start to really create that momentum. Now, if you have one of a kind pieces, that can be good on Etsy too, but the goal of Etsy is to have a product listing that's going to build momentum, that's going to work for you behind the scenes. So if you have something that's only one off, well, then it gets sold. And then any SEO benefit or algorithm benefits that you've gotten pretty much come down when that listing is sold and it's no longer there. So
Right.
what I recommend people is number of SKUs doesn't matter. I mean, I had 10 SKUs and it worked out perfectly. A lot of my members and my clients, we focus on their best sellers, their year round collection and put it on there, and they're doing great too. And then if you do have anything in particular, this is a great strategy. If you have collections that are maybe more one off, have that on your website, like a website
Mhm.
exclusive. So now you're using Etsy to its benefit for the algorithm year round customers that can buy from you. And now you can strategically use your collections and your quarterly, monthly new pieces on your website. So you get the best of both worlds in that way. So that's what I recommend because I mean, Etsy can be a bit of work with adding the listings and adding the products. So let's make it as easy as possible and use it for what it's best used for.
Yeah, I like that because then it's you can gather the people still from Etsy. They can buy from you your regular products, your prints, your, stuff like that. And then who's to say they wouldn't become a repeat buyer because they love their print so much that they might go to your site and purchase like something from a new collection. Like I love
Yeah.
that kind of working in tandem, but that makes a lot of sense versus like constantly putting new stuff up on Etsy because that could be overwhelming if you're also doing it on your website.
Yes, 100%.
Well, tell the audience what it actually would look like to work with you. Like, what does that onboarding look like? I mean, obviously you're a coach, but what does that actually look like?
Yeah. So I have a program. Well, I have two things. I have a free Etsy training, which goes into the 3 steps basically to get your product seen. So we talked a little bit about step one, which is appear. You have to appear in the search results in order to get any traction on Etsy.
Mhm.
Then step 1.1 is attract. You have to not only get on that first page search results, but then there's still 60 other listings right there. So how do you attract the attention of the shopper? And this is with strategically using the different marketing levers that Etsy has to offer. So once you appear, once you attract, then people click on your listing, right? Now, the next step, step two, is to confirm the customer's expectations. So, what this means is they've clicked on your listing, but now they probably have some questions. They're wondering, what size is it? Is it a printable download? Is it going to get shipped to them? Does it come in a frame? Does it not come in a frame? There's all of these questions that customers have. And step two, when they're on your listing, looking through your photos, reading your reviews, you have to make sure every single question is answered. Because on a place like Etsy, if there's one question left unanswered, they will hit the back button and go to the next product to see if that fits the bill. So, step two is, how do you educate through your photos and your description? How do you make sure that you're giving all of the details that are needed? Then we go to step three, which is trust. And we have to give trust, because a lot of what we talked about today is how sometimes, as artists, small business owners, creatives, we have the benefit of the doubt against us because of maybe what other people have done. And there probably have been cases where people have bought on Etsy and didn't have a great experience. So we really have to give trust to those customers to get them to add the product to cart. So what that means is having some great reviews, making sure your brand store is totally filled in, that credibility that you mentioned, so important, so people feel confident to purchase. So those are essentially the three, maybe four steps: attract, appear, confirm, trust. That's how you get found, and that's how you get add to cart and you get purchase. So, with that, I do have a free Etsy training, which I can share the link, but I talk through that in more detail on that free training. And then I also have a course called Etsy Algorithm Secrets. And this is essentially putting that all into practice. How do we actually beat the algorithm? How do we get seen? It's entirely marketing related, which is beautiful because it works on Etsy and other platforms, but truly building that business to the point that it's bringing in those recurring income, that passive income, those recurring sales, to create this as a revenue stream. So that program is essentially a self-paced course. And then I have a Facebook group where you get support from myself in the community. And I have another certified Etsy Algorithm Secrets coach in there with me that I've trained to answer questions. And you also get a personalized Etsy audit. So this is what people love. When you've completed the program, implemented, I totally get that different businesses have different needs, different things come up. Skincare is one business, artwork is another one. And depending on the type of artwork, like there's different variations, right? So one thing that I love to do is offer people a personalized Etsy audit where I will go in and take a video of me auditing their Etsy shop. Did you think about this? This is confusing. What about this? Let's adjust this. And that is really like the cherry on top to get another eyeball to come at it from like a customer point of view. If I was to purchase this, what is missing? What's confusing? What could be clearer? What could be evolved? And that really helps people to get to that final step of having sales coming in on Etsy. So I have that free training that people can sign up for at monicalittlecoaching.com/Etsy webinar. And then the last couple minutes of the training, I talk about my course too, in case anyone's interested in working
Yeah.
together.
Well, that's great. And I'll link to all of that. But yeah, I love everything you're offering, from like the free webinar to the course to the, I mean, that audit I think is great, because I do think that's the biggest challenge, is like, we work alone, we're artists, we're doing a lot of this by ourselves. And I think having a second set of eyes just to like come at it from a different perspective can be so helpful, just to kind of perfect everything before you put it out there. Yeah, so I love that. Well, tell us about your podcast. So you also have a podcast. What made you expand into podcasting, and what can we expect to listen to on that?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called the Product Biz Podcast, and this is essentially just a place for me to bring guests on. I know you're going to be on the show shortly, which is going to be a super fun episode. But just for me to either share my stories, my lessons of growing my own business, or to bring amazing guests on to have them share their expertise. From what I found is that a lot of artists and small business owners just, Instagram is great for quick pieces of content, but it's like being able to learn and hear from someone and their experiences, their own struggles, how they overcame it. I talk a lot about mindset, because that's a huge part of running any type of business, is how you show up every day and how you think of things and where your mind is at in terms of challenges, how you overcome them, how you view them, things like that. So it's called the Product Biz Podcast. Lots of great guests and insights just to help grow a business are in there.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I'll definitely share that because I think, obviously these are podcast listeners. They're looking for other podcasts that can help them grow their businesses. And it really sounds like, you're doing great stuff. And I've listened to it and I'm going to be on it soon. So definitely a fan.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Well, kind of rounding it out, what do you see next for your business? What are you working on? What does the year ahead look like? What are you really excited about?
Ooh, I love it. So for me, really, I mean, my biggest mission right now is just to help as many people as possible with Etsy. I really feel like, it's hard being an artist, running a small business, starting from something from scratch, trying to get in front of people to see your artwork, see your products, grow what you're working towards. And I know that it's all of our passion to create what we create, but how do we also share it with the world? So, my passion really is just to help as many people as possible with using Etsy to get that feeling of like, yes, my artwork, my products are making an impact in this world. People are buying it, they're putting it up in their home, they're gifting it, they're loving it, whatever it may be. And I know how much a difference that makes when we feel like we're actually making progress. And it's motivating when we get those orders coming in that we're actually making a difference. So, what I'm really focusing on for the rest of this year is just spreading the word about Etsy. There's a lot of misconceptions about Etsy, some that we talked about today, about it's too saturated. You have to be the cheapest price to be successful. Etsy takes a lot of fees. I mean, there's all these misconceptions. And my goal is just to really flip all of that on its head and show people that you can stand out on Etsy. You can get in front of amazing customers on Etsy. You can grow your business on Etsy. You can stand out and find your mark on Etsy. So really that's what I'm here doing, and I'm just excited to work with more small business owners to help them to reach their dreams, have it be leaving their own full-time job or going on a vacation with their spouse and their kids, or just having a little bit more income coming in from what they do. So whatever it is, I just want to be there to support people and help them get there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm excited to see you just continue to do this. And I'm sure so many of the artists I work with will reach out. So that's wonderful. Well, I love to end every episode with a lesson or a tip or a trick or something that you've really used to grow your business that you can pass on to these artists and creatives and business owners and how they can grow as well.
Yes, such a good question. So, what I will end with is just understanding a couple things. So, number one, growing a business, getting exposure, growing a following, getting momentum takes time. And I think normalizing that, because I do see a lot of other coaches or people who have become successful in their own business that kind of skip over that, right? They're like, oh, look how great things are, or you can have X results so quickly. And I'm very straightforward in how I teach and how I coach is like, it's going to take effort, it's going to take time. But knowing that and giving yourself that time, giving yourself that grace, giving yourself the ability to create a solid foundation, an amazing business that's going to last. What
Mhm.
I notice, and maybe this is the advice that I'll give, is a lot of people focus on their current view. This is something I learned from one of my own personal coaches. A lot of people focus on their current view of where they're at right now, the challenges and the roadblocks that they're facing, but they forget about their vision. And that's where we have to focus. What's your end goal? Why are you doing what you're doing? Where do you want to be in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? And when we're going through the day to day challenges of our current view, if you can just keep that vision, keep that grind towards that vision, you're going to get there. So, knowing that it takes time and also knowing to just keep your eye on that vision of where you're going, that's going to help you throughout the good days, the bad days, the challenges, the roadblocks. And if anything, it's just helpful to keep that mindset as we go through every single day of running a business.
I definitely agree. I mean, I think it's so easy to get caught up in the day to day and the challenges and the things that aren't working. But I'm such a fan of, focusing on success, focusing on what you ultimately want, and focusing on looking backwards and saying, like, look where you were a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, and where you are now. I think that helps us to realize our successes versus just focusing on the negatives. And so I think that's such a great piece of advice and one I think really any business owner could benefit from hearing.
Yes,
Well,
100%.
thank you so much. Tell everyone how they can learn more about you. What's your website, Instagram? I can link it all as well, but share all of your links with us.
Yeah. So I'm mostly on Instagram, Monica Little Coaching. Feel free to send me a DM if you love this episode. I'd love to hear from you or if you have any questions. And my website is monicalittlecoaching.com, but I would mention just the Etsy webinar. That's probably the best place. If this episode piqued your interest on Etsy, then I would go to monicalittlecoaching.com/Etsy webinar. And that's going to be a perfect place to just continue learning on how you can get started and get your product seen on Etsy.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to share all of your knowledge. I know this was so helpful, and so many artists are going to either improve their Etsy or go and try Etsy out for the first time. So hopefully they also reach out to you and use your resources, because you clearly are a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.